talking about clinical trials, and Joe brings with him a wealth of experience in this area and focus on data and accuracy of data and the right type of data, but as well as organization of clinical trials. So Joe, over to you on introduction and some of your introductory thoughts.
Oh, thanks, Sina, and great to see all of you here at the symposium. I always love coming to HitLab and coming to Columbia to speak to everybody. Stan, great to see you. We got to get together soon. My name is Joe Dustin. I am the Vice President and General Manager at Medable. My focus for the past 20 years and continuing to be is on the patient experience. I would say that I'm leading a team that deals mostly with what we would call electronic clinical outcomes assessments. So questionnaires and capturing the patient voice in a clinical trial. And as the modern day comes to what we're trying to capture, what's happening to a patient in the clinical trial through investigations onto drug approval, is really capturing the subjective voice of a patient through what they think they feel, and the objective voice of what their body is telling us they feel through wearables and sensors and various digital endpoints. Put that together, and we have quite a pathway for quite differentiating claims, and also other benefits in speed and quality and just discovering things that couldn't be done before in a clinic setting. So this is the version of what we believe will become what decentralized trials is sort of promising, the idea of bringing research to people where they are, which would improve diversity in clinical trials. It would improve recruitment to go faster and hopefully shorten the duration of trial times, because as we will talk about, the number one thing on most pharma manufacturers and their clinical R&D teams is speed to market and speed in general, especially in an economic downturn. So that's what's on their mind today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think especially when you're trying to merge the right type of data with the right type of technologies, commensurate with the patient and the usability of that data, and how do you evaluate those outcomes. So as you're trying to organize these trials and eventually get to that outcome and the speed to market, of course, the trial needs to actually come forward with meaningful data. So what's your key aspect in terms of, in your area, what problem that you're trying to solve?
Yeah, so I think there's two main problems today that most companies are looking to solve, and a lot of supporting companies, an ecosystem of suppliers, vendors, and partners and whatnot that are there to try and help. Because we all know in most drug, device, other manufacturers of therapies, they can't do it alone, right? But overall speed to starting a study is probably the number one thing that most teams are thinking about. Now, the idea of decentralized trials and changing the way clinical R&D is done, and not so much in the lab, but actually getting the trial out there, writing the protocol, pushing it out to patients, finding those patients, and then conducting the study. They want to shorten the overall time of the entire study.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is, and when I was running clinical innovation at Bristol Myers Squibb, this was a big topic, is the incentives for how people move are different, and they're sometimes misaligned. And most people are incentivized to what they can control, which is get it started. Not many people are incentivized to what happens at the total end, because a lot of people won't be there at the end. It's just a longevity thing. Some of these trials go on for a long time. But so trial startup is big. And so a lot of companies are working there. But then once the trial starts, it's really the second thing that people are really thinking about is clinical trial matching, speed to recruitment. And this is where a lot of the talk around AI and in clinical trial operations has a significant play, I believe. There's also a play for AI in building stuff to get the startup faster, but also once the study's out, finding patients, using EHR data to match them, the use of real world data and various methods to aid in the ultimate data collection downstream. So finding patients, matching them, using those large language models to actually parse through inclusion criteria through actual data in a hospital. It's becoming game changing right now. It's not brand new. There have been companies doing it, but now it's becoming way easier to do it now. And so it's very, very interesting. So it's speed. It's all tied to speed, but those are the main problems that we have. So it's speed, quality, and compliance is sort of the top three things that are on their mind.
Yeah, that's really insightful, Joe. And you mentioned AI. and there's a lot of talk about AI and automation of processes. So when you're looking at speed, as you mentioned, and optimizing those processes, especially when you're trying to get the starting point, what's your thoughts on how AI and automation can be used in optimizing those processes specifically, given where we are in our knowledge?
Yeah, it's important to differentiate between, the word AI is thrown around quite a bit. And especially in the past year, I will admit, when I was, Stan had mentioned at one point I was at Medidata for a long time, great company. They hired a data science team so long ago before this was cool, right? And I would go to the side and say, "What are you guys working on?" And they would tell me what they're working on. And I didn't really get it. I knew it was important. There's a lot of math and a lot of things that they were doing. And then when the ChatGPT came out, it's like, oh, I can touch it. This is what you guys have been working on. And you could touch it, right? But there's a difference between generative AI and just better automation. And so a lot of what's happening in clinical trial operations is more automation than it is generative AI, right? What's happening in companies that, sponsors, companies that I've worked for and others, they're implementing this in-house to search. They're training these AI models for clinical R&D on all of their internal documents, on all their biomedical literature, on all their data sets from their trials, on all their protocols and how they're structured, on data on their metadata repositories. All these things are happening. So that what I've heard from folks that are in pharma now are like, they're using this internal tool now to query stuff that would take them hours or days to find. And now they're able to complete their tasks much faster, which is also part of the burn through the timing thing. It's not just building a study with a vendor and building a database. It's all the internal churn of stuff that you can't find. So just that alone is helping them to automate things that were before very manual and they just couldn't find it in the first place. They're creating bots to automate, classifications of files in a trial master file. They're using bots to auto build studies from a standard definition of a machine readable protocol. Protocol automation is becoming a thing right now where we can read the protocol, we can write the protocol, we can interpret the protocol. Oh, wow. This is like a balloon. And then we can send it downstream to start setting up systems. That's the part. We tried this 10 years ago to try and set up downstream systems with various automation and mapping tools. Now what's happening is it's happening, but the mapping doesn't really exist. It's auto learning how to do it and using more standards that have been put out in the industry. So those are examples of automation where that stuff coming us together. The generative side, I think, is really, I would almost akin that to a recommendation engine. Like think about Amazon, you buy a lot of things and it tells you might like this. What happens when you're building a study and it says, hey, you're building a study like this in a phase 2 oncology study. You've also used this in the past. Others like you are using these questionnaires to determine these outcomes, and others are doing like 5 blood draws, not 17. So like it's giving you kind of data that it's not generative, but it's generating feedback for you in that way. So
yeah, that's interesting. Maybe there's a way of getting to best practice a little quicker in terms of what's being used. So when you talk about, you started off by saying one of the key aspects is the slowness that you're trying to solve. So when you're looking at potential solutions, how do you strategize? Are there certain strategies that you see are key to help you speed up clinical trials, and what aspects would you focus on?
So I think, like I mentioned before, speed to startup, incentives aligning to understand how we can drive the people problem. It's not a people problem, just the people in general need to be directed down a path where they're not dinged for trying something new. Because let's be honest, the way things are happening now, it's not great. And so you need to try something different, and you need to be rewarded in some way for trying something different, but definitely not penalized if it goes wrong, right? Because you should try to create a safe space to try new things. Now, of course, again, think about how pharma thinks. These drug programs have been going on for many years, could be 6-8 years, cost them billions of dollars to get to this point. Imagine you're in clinical development. You're the one who's been here on this asset development for the past 5 years. We have another 3 years to go into phase 3 and through approval. Your entire reason for being is to get this thing on the market, right? The last thing you want to do is try and jeopardize that. So I understand how they think, which is why the idea of innovation and applying these new techniques and trying out new technology, it's really, pharma doesn't want to revolutionize and crazy disrupt everything and rip it apart. They just need incremental innovations.
Yeah.
It's a little bit better than what it was before, which gives them a speed impact. It gives them the incentive to do better, and it shows an ROI, especially now where things are tough, right? And it's a pattern, right? So think about, Stan, you've been there, right? Like 2002 crash, 2008 crash. All of these economic downturns also spike up a crazy digital transformation trend where IT groups are putting aside 10, 20, $50 million for transformation, and companies that are ready to scale for that opportunity end up getting huge.
Yeah.
And it's happening again. And so all of these companies if you're ready to scale now, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a startup, if you're a mid-sized, even a bigger company that can innovate to do something new, this is the time where everyone is reorganizing. Yes, pharma's laying off a lot of great people. They're reorganizing, they're re-strategizing. And since this AI thing is probably the biggest stepwise innovation maybe since the iPhone in a way, and in the way it will affect marketplaces and a whole ecosystem around it, there will be a huge amount of benefit for those that can capture it at the right way, because pharma, again, needs to do more with less, needs to optimize their process, and just be better than what they were with less money and less people. So huge opportunity for this stuff.
Yeah, and I think embedded in that is kind of a key call to action or barriers that you see in terms of how to optimize. And I think your point on incrementality is important as well, because given all of the tools and different ways to strategize, if you're tackling it in an incremental way, you can actually see what's really working, and instead of getting have all confounding variables and try to figure out, well, which strategy kind of works best.
Yeah, and I think we're going to tap into a lot more of the healthcare enterprise as we bring research and healthcare closer together. If there's anything I can say to folks on this call that are or in this symposium that are very much involved in the healthcare space and digital health, the accessibility of health data through EHRs and through exchanges and through various means is becoming easier. There are new standards that are being put in place. There are initiatives right now between HL7 and the research community that are opening up more data with the consent of patients, of course, to share. But look for a project called Project Vulcan, which is HL7's way to make the FHIR resources more research native. They understand what protocols mean. They understand what the schedule of activities, procedures to be done in a protocol of a clinical trial, and how it links to healthcare, especially in situations when you're in a hospital and you're prescribing clinical trials as a care option. This is huge to sort of just make it the natural next stage in the continuum, and opens up that data to not only find patients that are eligible for those trials, but then return the data back to them at the end and in their journey. So this is a big deal.
And that really speaks to your ROI, but also value-based care, and really what goes back to the patient for actually engaging in the trial. Incredible insights, Joe. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have you on and sharing this wealth of information, and also some new aspects to think about. So thank you so much.